We are very, very lucky to have Felicity here with us today. Felicity is from Imperial College, one of the leading universities in the world. I think it was number 4 in the world. Last time I checked, number six. Okay, it was last year I checked. Number 6 in the world, not in London, but in the world, particularly for engineering, for the sciences, and all the other specialist subjects that I'm sure Felicity, thank you, we'll talk about. We are extra grateful to Felicity, who lives quite far away and has made the journey in the bad weather, and who's going to be talking to you for the next 45 minutes about how to write, 1, what Imperial is, and 2, how to write an effective personal statement, okay? Personal statements are so important, and it's the thing that sets you apart from the competition. Everyone applying for competitive courses has 3 A's, or whatever the requirement is. It's your personal statement that really sets you apart. They really do matter. So we have Imperial here today working with you. Our next session in the East is on the 12th of January, and we've got someone from Oxford University coming to do that session. So please make sure you catch that on the YouTube. And then we're going to have lots of other universities coming in to work with you over the next few months as well. Okay? So I'm sure you want to join me in a warm round of applause for Felicity.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? I think you can. I can hear a mic. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I'm really excited to talk to you this evening. So I work at Imperial. My role at Imperial is Widening Participation Schools Liaison Officer. It's really short and catchy. But basically, I come and talk to young people like you about university and applying for university and all those things that you really might not know until you kind of get into thinking about university. And there's quite a lot to find out about. And there's lots of things that can really help you get the best out of your university application. So I'm going to talk to you very quickly about Imperial, and then about the UCAS application itself, and then mostly about writing that personal statement, because that is, for people who are applying for university, it's the biggest thing, and it's the thing that you can change in effect. The rest of the things, by the time it comes around to writing your UCAS application, all the other things are kind of in, it'll be your predicted grades, that would have been done in your mocks, the subjects you're taking, your teacher reference, all those things, they're already there, but the personal statement is the thing that you can make the difference in, and it's going to make the biggest difference to your application. So just a little bit about Imperial, person before we just said. We are a university in London. We're part of the Russell Group. We're a very selective and academic university. We're a research-intensive university as well. And we are the only university in the UK that focuses entirely on STEM, so science, technology, engineering, medicine, and from this September for the first time at an undergraduate level business. So we're going to have a kind of science of business course as well. If you're sat here thinking, oh my gosh, I want to study English at university and she's going to talk to me about science, I'm not. This is not going to be science focused. I'm going to talk to you about university applications to competitive universities in general. So don't worry if you're sat here thinking, I really want to study history. It will be relevant to you as well. University applications are going to go through the UCAS website. Hopefully you guys know all that information. It is all there for you to find, and you've got the PowerPoint, so I'll let you look through it. The things to note is the early application deadline. So if you are applying to medicine, dentistry, veterinary courses, or any course, I think we might have just lost Mike, I'll be quite loud instead, or any course at Oxford or Cambridge, your application deadline is going to be the 15th of October, and believe me, that is going to come around so fast. It seems like it's a next year, a year 13 thing. By the time you're back in September, with school deadlines, you may have a week or so to get that finished. So all the things that you need to do and that you want to put into that application, you need to be thinking about doing now so that you've got those to write in the summer, especially if you're applying for that early deadline. But even if you're not doing the early deadline, that January deadline is going to come around quicker than you think as well. So yeah, got some information, but I'll let you look through the PowerPoint slides. It's great you've got them. It just shows you the UCAS website. Hopefully your school will talk you through this as well. They've done up the website recently. It looks like a hub, but you go through and you put in your options. You get 5 options for university courses. There are a few rules in there. If you're applying for Oxford or Cambridge, you can only apply for one of the 2. And if you're applying again for any of those early deadline subjects, medicine, dentistry, veterinary, you can only apply for 4 of those courses. And then your 5th course you can use for another choice, but you can't do 5 medical applications or 5 dental applications. So yeah, next slide, please. Some bits on here, again, you've got the slides, so I'll let you read them, but there are questions on the UCAS form. They've started adding these recently about contextual background questions. What that means is it gives the universities, it gives us and the admissions team context to who you are as a person and where you've achieved that education that you're telling us about. Because someone who's got 3 A's from a school where the average is 3 A's has still done really, really well. But someone who's got maybe AAB, but the average at the school is CCD, suddenly, rather than looking like, oh, slightly worse than the person that's got 3 A's, the admissions tutors can be like, okay, well, this person's achieved this in this context. So there's questions around that. Make sure when you're filling out the application form, you look into those and you answer them as best as you can. If you're confused, ask your school. If they ask you things about your parental, like if your parents have been to uni or things like that, you don't have to answer any of those questions. You can say, prefer not to say, but they do give universities context, and they can feed into things about contextual offers, which is where universities, again, make those offers in context of who you are and how you achieved your education. Next slide, please. Oh, this one's kept that on. And then again, there's some questions around extra support for you. So if you have a disability, or if you've ever been in care and things like that, these highlight to universities that you might need extra support, maybe in the admissions process. So if you're going to be interviewed or do an admissions test, if you have a disability and you get extra time in your school exams, we can put that in place for you as part of the admissions process. Or when you get to university, transition into university, and when you're at university with us as well. Yeah, next slide, please. And yeah, the next one. So I'm whizzing through these ones, guys, so we can go on to the personal statements. And then the final one is there's a new question, this is this year, for extra activities. This is your chance to show universities other things you've done that are just as important in lots of ways as your A-level grades. So things like this programme that shows your commitment. You've shown up on Wednesday nights in the absolute freezing cold to come and do extracurriculum and academic things. Tell the universities about that. This is the kind of thing we want to know. It shows you what a committed student you are. There's now a space for you to do that on the UCAS form. So we'll talk about the personal statement. You'll be writing about these things in the personal statement too, but list them out in this bit of the UCAS form so that the universities make sure they see them, and then they can go and read about them further in your personal statement. So things like this programme, if you go to any university taster days, if you go to any summer schools this summer, make sure you list them on your UCAS form. It's really important. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then, I think you guys will probably know this, but just to quickly go over it, when your universities get your applications, you'll go through the admissions process. So at selective universities, that might include an admissions test and an interview as well, as your personal statement and your UCAS application. And then you'll receive decisions from universities in the form of offers. So you might get an unconditional offer. These are pretty rare these days, unless you've already done your A-levels and you're applying with your grades. Most people will get a conditional offer, which means we'd like to offer you a place on condition that you get 3 A's in these subjects or whatever it is. Or sometimes you may get an unsuccessful as a back, but hopefully that won't happen to anybody here. Great. And then you'll get all of those between when you send off your UCAS form. So if you send it off on the early deadline, so any time, kind of from early November, all the way until the 19th of May is the last day that universities have to respond to you. And then you will have until June, the date is up there, to reply back to the universities and choose your 2 choices. So you'll have your firm choice, which is where you really want to go, and your insurance choice, which is a choice of you say, okay, I don't get my firm choice on results day, I could go here instead. Again, there's more information on my slides, so I'll let you read into that, but make sure when you're doing that, and this will be a whole year away for you guys and you'll have some support before then, but make sure that insurance choice is actually a lower offer than your firm choice, because otherwise it won't work. It won't do anything. If it's the same offer, if it's AAA for your firm and your insurance, and you get AAB on results day, then you've missed both those offers. So make sure that insurance choice is 1, a lower offer than your firm choice, and 2, somewhere you actually want to go. There's no point in putting it in if you're never going to go there. Thank you. Next slide. Great. I think, yeah, next slide to you. I'll let you guys read all of these and I'll move on to personal statements because there's quite a lot to go through, and I think this is, like I said, this is really important. This is where you guys can make the big difference in your applications. So next slide, please. Oh, actually, before I go on, I don't know if anybody have any questions on the bit I very quickly went through about UCAS? No? Fantastic. So personal statements. What are the personal statements? So it's the bit of your UCAS application that you are going to be in control of and that you are going to write. Unfortunately, for competitive universities, grades are not enough. At Imperial, for example, we can have, in some of our courses, our most competitive courses, have 19 to 20 people apply for every single place on that course. That is at the extreme end, and don't let that scare you, because also for every place in that course, someone gets that place, even with that statistic. But of those 19 to 20, maybe 12 to 15 will have the predicted grades for that course, whatever that is, for A star, AA, or something around there. So that means, unfortunately, that grades are not enough. So don't let that scare you. Let that kind of motivate you to do more things like this. I'm already preaching to the choir. Again, you guys that are here on an absolutely freezing night doing extra university stuff already in year 12, where lots of your peers may not even be thinking about this yet. But the grades alone are not enough to offer you a place at a competitive course. So that is why we are using personal statements. It's your chance to tell us why you are a good student for this course, why we should select you for that place, why you are going to make it a fantastic university student for that subject, and why you're going to go on and what amazing things you're going to do with that subject. It's your chance to show us that. And then the final bit on that is not to waste the opportunity of your personal statement. Other students won't be, so make sure you're not. Make sure you're putting your all into it. You're doing things this year. I'll talk about kind of making notes and kind of making sure you're writing down and recording all the amazing stuff you're doing. So when it comes to actually writing it and putting pen to paper, that's going to be the easy bit. You guys are going to be ready to go. But make sure you leave yourself enough time and you plan properly for your personal statement and not to waste that opportunity. So what do we want to see and why is it important? So personal statement is important for us to get an understanding that you understand what the subject is. There'd be nothing worse than you showing up to study maths with us or, I don't know, drama somewhere else and having completely misunderstood what it's going to be like as the subject. And you get there and you're like, I hate this subject. This was not what I was expecting. So showing us that you know what the subject is and why you're interested in it. The other one is that you are making the most of opportunities that you have. And this is a really key one because people start getting really worried around university applications. And I always get questions from people being like, I'm applying, I don't know, from Imperial to aerospace engineering. I want to build airplanes. And they're like, someone I know has spent like 3 months at Boeing, like doing work experience, and I haven't been able to do that. And when you ask them, the person that's done 3 months work experience at Boeing, it's because their uncle works at Boeing, so they've got to go with him. We know that not everyone has an uncle who works at Boeing, and that's not going to be an opportunity that everybody has. So again, looking at your application in context, but looking at whether all the opportunities that you've had, you've made the most of them. So programs like this, the fact that you live in London, where there are loads of universities and museums and other places and things that you can take advantage of to explore your subject, to explore academics, to go to things like your trip to Parliament or whatever it is. These are opportunities that are available to you that a student who doesn't live in London doesn't have, so make sure you make the most of those opportunities. We're looking for evidence of skills that are going to help you flourish at university, whether that is teamwork, time management, your academic skills, your problem-solving skills, all these things. We're looking for evidence of those in your personal statement. We're looking for you to be a self-motivated learner. At the moment at school, you have got quite guided learning. You come to school with a set timetable, your teachers talk you through the subject and give you kind of the work to do. At university, it's much more open. You'll go to a lecture to learn some information, and then it'll be up to you to be like, oh yeah, he was talking about this today. Maybe I'll go get a book out from the library and learn more about that. It's much more self-directed learning. You're going to have a lot more free time, quote unquote, untimetabled time, where you will need to do your own self-directed learning to succeed. So we're looking for evidence of you being that type of person in your personal statement. We're looking for your interest in the subject, and we'll talk about ways to show that a bit later on. We're also looking about what you might want to do with your degree. If you don't know yet, that's fine. Lots of people don't, and don't panic. You don't need to have your whole career plan planned out. But if you have an idea about what you want to do with your degree, I want to study environmental science or environmental geography because I want to go and work for climate change research or something like that. If you've got an idea, tell us about it. We want to hear about it. And what will you bring to the university experience, and what made you want to study that degree as well? So we're basically looking for a statement of, again, why we should give you the place. Why are you the best student for this place on a course? Next slide, please. So one quick tip is to remember that the personal statement is going to be read by probably a few different people as it goes through the admissions process. But the person who makes the ultimate decision on your application, again, especially at competitive universities, will be someone called an admissions tutor. They will be an academic in the department that you are applying to. So they will be a researcher as well as a teacher. So they will be knowledgeable of the subject. You can use technical language. You can talk about things in your A-level courses or subjects that you want to talk about without needing to explain them out. The person reading it is going to be technical. So sometimes people think, do I need to explain this? Nope, you're going to have a limited number of words. We're going to go into that as well. You will not need to waste them kind of explaining subjects. It's going to be someone technical who reads your personal statement and makes that decision, especially at competitive universities. Next slide, please. So the first stage of writing a personal statement is to do your research. Part one of that research is being at a talk like this tonight. And the next is to start thinking about, okay, what is it that I want to put on my personal statement? Now, the next thing I'm going to suggest to you is a mind map. Some people hate them, and if you're not the type of person that likes kind of drawing out a mind map style, that's fine. Do the way that works for you. But in some way, start thinking about what it is you're going to put on your personal statement. So you can start tonight when you go home and be like, what have I done already that I might want to put on my personal statement? And you can start mapping it out. So I think on the next slide, I've got an example. and start thinking about what are those skills, what are those subject interests that I want to show those admissions tutors, and what evidence do I have for that already, and what evidence might I need? Because if you start mapping this out and you think, oh, I really want to show my teamwork to the admissions tutors, but I don't really have much evidence of teamwork, well, you've got 10 months until the early deadline to go and do some things that you can show the admissions tutors your teamwork. So yeah, you can see here, thinking about teamwork, so maybe playing in a team sport, your subject interest, a book you've read, or a club you're in at school, or your communication skills, things like volunteering or a class project. And then you may also see places where you can link skills together. And I talked a little bit, and I'll go on again, about how little space you actually are going to have on your personal statement. The best personal statements will be people who are having to remove stuff that they want to put in there because they've got so much to put in. So anything that you can find here, MUN is model UN. Anything you can find that shows more than one thing that you want to show off, then that's a great thing. That's going to be a really good example because you're going to cover more bases with less words in your personal statement. So like I said, a mind map might not be you. You might be a list person, whatever it is. It can be a scrap of paper. It can be a notes page on your phone, whatever it is. Start jotting these things down as you are thinking about them. Like if you do something, if you think of something, if you read a book, if you listen to a podcast, if you see a tweet on Twitter or a post on Instagram that's relevant to what you want to study, jot it down. Like I said, it can be anywhere. It can be an old notebook. It can be your phone. It doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to look good, but get it down. Because when you come to write it, you will have something to write from, and it will be the easiest thing. Even when people talk about essay plans, anyone doing any essay subjects in here will know that the essay plan is the hardest part. And if you've got a good essay plan, when you sit down to write your essay, actually, that doesn't take very long because you just write from your plan. This is going to be your essay plan. So make it look however you want and works for the way that you learn, but get planning. Next slide, please. And then the next thing is going to be to select those topics and skills to include. So the best people are the people who are like you. You're going to be starting now. You're going to have all these things written down, and then you are going to be in the best position because rather than trying to think of things to fill out your personal statement, you're going to be able to be selective. You're going to look down your long list and you're going to be like, right, I really want to put about the event I went to here, when whatever it was that you did that was relevant to your degree, or when I was like member of the school council in year 8, maybe that's not as relevant as I thought it was when I first wrote that down. I can move that out. It's going to be much better to put something else in there and select those topics and skills to include. And next slide, please. So when you're thinking about those topics and skills to include, we're going to start to think about writing that first draft of your personal statement. Lots of people have questions about what it's actually going to look like. So I'm going to suggest a structure to you tonight. It absolutely does not need to be the structure of your final personal statement. There's no admissions tutors going through and being like, well, this isn't the structure that we suggest. Absolutely not. Throw out their application. That's not going to happen. But if you're looking for a structure, this is a very classical one of personal statements, and it's a good one to go with if you don't really know what else to go with. So you're going to have an introduction, so you're going to introduce your personal statement. It's not as important as people sometimes think it is. People are thinking of kind of essays or writing prizes. This isn't a writing competition. You don't need to have some lovely full circle writing structure in your personal statement. It's just there to introduce you and your personal statement. And I'll go into a bit about the introduction as well. You're then going to have the main section, and this is the bulk of your personal statement. And I really do mean bulk. When I talk a bit later, I'll show you just kind of what we suggest. When you're looking at competitive universities, you are looking at a minimum 75% of your personal statement should be your academic subject interest, minimum. And that's for very vocational subjects like medicine or things where there's other things to talk about. If you're applying for something like maths, 90 to 100% should be your academic interest. And then that other 25 maximum percent is going to be your extracurricular, supercurricular, things that you do outside of your curriculum but that you can link back round either to your subject interest or to those other skills we talked about at the beginning. What's going to make you a good student? Your teamwork, your problem-solving skills, things that you can link back to why you're going to be a great student studying that. And then finally, your conclusion, where you kind of round up and conclude your personal statement. But yeah, like I said, this is flexible. You do not need to follow this. It's just a suggestion. Next slide, please. So, the maximum length of your personal statement is 4,000 characters. It's a really weird way of kind of measuring. It's not a word count, or 37 or 47 lines, whichever is the smallest of those two. It's actually a hangover from when the UCAS form was paper, and you literally had to fit your personal statement into a bit of paper on a form. We've just kept it for this long. Who knows why? UCAS, no, we don't. Like I said, 75 to 90% should be your academic interest, and then 10 to 25%, really that could be 0 to 25%, depending on the subject. Should be non-subject related interests, but things that you are relating back around to those skills. So supercurricular, so it's around the curriculum. It's not exactly your curriculum, but it's things around it. And I think maybe one more click, I've got an example. Yeah, so that 4,000 characters is going to be about a side of A4 typed in 12-point font. So it's really not that much writing when you think about it. And you can see here what's highlighted in blue. This is your subject interest. And then you can see there's only a few lines at the top and bottom for your introduction and your conclusion, and some supercurricular things that are not your academic interests. Sometimes people get, when you're thinking about university, you hear a lot about the American education system on films and TV, and there it's much more about extracurricular, because they apply to university not for a specific subject, they just go to the university or the college, and there it's all about the extracurricular, and just playing on a sports team can be enough to get you into university. It's very different here, so make sure you know kind of the education system that you're in, and that you're applying in the right way for the UK system. Next slide, please. So, introduction. Honestly, it's not that big a deal. You want to catch the reader's attention, but it's not the most important part of your personal statement, so don't worry too much. I've got some examples on these slides. Because you've got the slides, I'm not going to read them out now. You can go and read them yourselves. Don't get bogged down by these examples. These are not by any means the best personal statement we've ever seen. They're just an example of someone who has encapsulated what I'm showing on the slide. It can be really difficult sometimes actually to read samples of writing, because you can get stuck thinking that yours needs to look like that. It doesn't need to look like this, but it's just someone who is like come up with a nice almost story of an introduction of why they're interested in the subject. But the other thing I would say, and I think it's on my next slide, is one, don't worry about your introduction too much, and two, my best tip is to not write your introduction first. Is to leave it alone, because it's really hard to write an introduction. It's really hard to think of something good and catchy and something that you want to write, and it will bog you down. You'll sit there with that blank Word document open, or that blank notes page being like, what on earth do I write? And that will stop you writing. Go and write your bulk of your personal statement first. Go and write the most important bit first, and come back and write your introduction at the end. It will stop with that writer's block, and also you know what you're introducing. You'll know what the things are that you've ended up talking about and what you want to introduce. The other thing is that sometimes if you don't have enough characters to write about some amazing things you've done, and it's the choice of cutting out something that's not when you're on student council in year 8, but a summer school or something that you did, and that's what's looking like it might get cut, then cut your introduction. The academic stuff is the most important part of your personal statement. And yeah, don't let the pressure of writing put you off. Start with the middle bit. So moving on to that middle bit, the subject knowledge is the bulk of your personal statement. You are answering some of those questions that I said at the beginning. So why do you want to study the subject? What are your particular areas of interest? Tell us about them. Tell us why you want to come to university and kind of have that subject opened up. And you'll be able to study with some of the researchers who are doing the cutting edge research in that subject. What is it that makes you want to study it? Just writing, unfortunately writing, I really love chemistry, is not going to get you a place in a competitive chemistry course. You are going to need to tell us, what bit of chemistry was it? Oh, when I was in one of my lessons and we learned about, I'm not a chemist, you guys are going to realise now, when we learned about some organic chemistry reactions, and I realised how that linked with my biology class, with organic chemistry, and suddenly I wanted to learn more, or whatever it is. Tell us about the thing when you've sat in one of your A-level classes and gone, this is really cool, right? And maybe one of your friends didn't think it was so cool. That's the type of thing we want to know about. What is it that you're really interested in? Again, career aspirations, an awareness of other things going on around there as well. But really, it's your bulk subject knowledge. And I've got some examples on the next slide of how you can show us and things you can do to show us this. So yeah, next slide, please. So, how you can build in your subject knowledge. Again, people here start thinking about, well, if I need to tell people how much I really like English, I needed to have gone to the British Library and read all of the texts. Now, obviously, no one can do that, but so they need to think about these really impressive things. And actually, some of the best personal statements that we will receive every year are people that have done nothing really impressive, quote unquote. They'll be from someone who's just read an online article, maybe from someone who's listened to a podcast, or maybe someone who has gone onto Twitter and looked at some scientists who are tweeting about their current research and have looked into their current research that way. It will be things that are accessible to everyone that you don't even need to leave your home to do a lot of the time. But they will write some of the best personal statements we see because they would have done all those things we've been talking about. They would have told us why they were interested in that subject. They would have convinced us that they know exactly what it is and that they are going to make a fantastic student in there. They've got the skills to do it, they love that subject, and they really want to know more about it. The people teaching you at competitive universities, at research-intensive universities, are researchers themselves. They love their subject. They've dedicated their whole lives to their subject, some mostly really small little bits of their subject. They want to find other people that love that subject too. That is what they are looking for when they are reading these personal statements. So show them that. And yeah, like I said, doesn't need to be big. Books, great. Physical books. Sometimes, again, people get stuck with like physical books versus online or an ebook or an online article or journal. They're exactly the same. Doesn't need to be a physical book, but if you've got a physical book, fantastic. Journals, so research journals are where new research is published. If you are thinking of STEM, they're a really good thing to include in your personal statement. But the thing to know about research journals is they can be really hard to access when you're in an A-level because they're written for scientists, right? And we know that you guys are not a scientist yet. That's why you're coming to university, to learn how to understand those research journals. But if you go and look at some that are relevant to something that you're doing in your A-level class, the first bit of a research journal is called the abstract. It's the introduction, and it kind of summarizes what that piece of research is and what they've found. You should be able to read those. Maybe you might need to look up some words, but they are normally the most accessible parts. So see whether you can read some, find some that make sense. Again, I mentioned Twitter. Lots of scientists and researchers in the social sciences and across all of the humanities and the arts as well will tweet about their research. It's a space that they use to talk about their research. They'll tweet it in an accessible way to the general public, and they'll link you to where that research is written up. So go and search for kind of new research in the subject that you're applying for. Go and look up what the new research is, what the current cutting-edge research is, and have a go at reading the research journals. Again, we know you might not be able to read the whole thing. Again, podcasts, like put them on your phone, listen to them on the bus. Science, humanities, all of those, there'll be podcasts about new research. They're a really great free way to expand your knowledge and give you things to talk about in university admissions. In the same way, blogs, online, YouTube videos. Like, again, people sometimes think these are lesser or not as good as like an old-fashioned book or something. No, they're exactly the same. If it is about the thing that you're interested in and it's going to give you stuff to talk about in your personal statement, they are just as worthwhile and they are really, really helpful. Things like this, events you do, if you apply to any summer schools this summer, which I would highly recommend everyone here do. All universities hold summer schools every summer. They're free of charge. The criteria to be part of them is similar to the criteria that would bring to be part of this programme. Apply to a few. Again, you're in London, so you have the option of loads of amazing world-class universities right on your doorstep that you can apply to this summer. Things like MOOCs, massive online courses you can work through, especially things like maths. There's loads of them, but across lots of different subjects as well. And just lots and lots of options. So again, we have an example here. I'm not going to read it out because you guys have got it, but just to talk you through why it's a good one. So this formula at the bottom is quite formulaic. You're not going to write your whole personal statement like this, but it'll give you a good idea of what a great personal statement starts with, the basis of it. It's, I did X or A, so that might be something you did in your A-level class. I studied biology, so I'm going to use a biology example because I know that. So maybe you studying DNA and genetics in your biology class and you learnt about the structure of DNA. And that got you thinking about that and how that works and how that DNA actually forms into people, proteins, life. So you then went and you looked up something more about it. Maybe you went onto Twitter and you looked up. Maybe you got a book out of your school library, whatever it was. You watched a YouTube video. Tell us about the next step, the thing that you found out, and then tell us about what you want to find out more about when you're at university. What are you excited about? What is university going to give you further in that subject? So it is a really good formula when you're writing a personal statement. You can apply what we call the so what test. So you can say, well, okay, you really like this thing, but so what? Or going back earlier on to that person whose uncle let them go and work at Boeing for 3 months. If they just write on their personal statement, I worked at Boeing for 3 months, that's going to, well, we don't score personal statements in the work, but like if we were scoring, that's pretty much going to be a 1 or a 0. It's someone who has listened to some YouTube videos about new plane designs and has told us about that and how that led them to go and read a research article about a new type of wing or engine for the plane. And what they're really excited about is at university getting to test that out in a laboratory environment, maybe in a university wind tunnel. That is an excellent personal statement, and they're going to go right to the top of the pile versus that person who was at Boeing for 3 months but didn't tell us anything about it. You have to tell us about the things that you've done. Writing a shopping list of experiences is not going to get you anywhere. Think about everything you write on that personal statement. like your annoying friend, teacher, parent, however you want to put in there, me, whatever, I'm going, well, so what? Tell us why. Why is that important? Apply that so what test. Next slide, please. And then finally, that extracurricular, the supercurricular. So think about skills that can be applied to your subject. Relate it back to your subject. So leadership. I'm applying for medicine. I know that a doctor leads a medical team and leads a whole team of healthcare professionals when they're caring for a patient. I know that a doctor's going to need leadership skills. How do I show that I've got leadership skills? Oh, when we did a class project, I took on the role of leading. I emailed everyone out everything. I collated all the slides. I helped come up with a time plan for our project, whatever it was. Show us examples of your leadership. Maybe you've been captain of a sports team, whatever it is. Show us a time when you led and you used those skills. And tell us that you know that that's important to being a doctor, if you're applying to be a doctor. If you're applying to study history, don't tell us that you know that's important to be a doctor. Things like teamwork. Again, some people often put teamwork, they'll put something like playing a team sport. But if anyone here has ever been in a team for a team sport, they will know that just being on a sports team does not mean you are good at teamwork. Everyone will have been in a team with someone who is not good at teamwork. So just telling us you've been part of a team is not enough. Tell us what you did that showed your teamwork skills. There's an example in here, as like the person who was working in the orchestra, but they worked and worked and worked in the team. And they learned to cooperate with others and keep the morale of the team high, and that's how the team succeeded. Well, that might be the basketball half, but you get the idea. Show us what your skills are and how that is going to work. Relate that back to what you're applying to. You're applying to be a physicist, okay? Scientists work in lab teams all the time. They need to work together in a team to best use everybody's skills. They need to communicate effectively. That nice example for your mind map of a communication skill could come in here to work together with the team and get the best out of that lab team. So whatever it is that you're putting in this bit, like I said, it's a smaller section than you are going to expect, and make sure you relate it back to the academics. That is the key with competitive universities. Next slide, please. So like I was saying, the so what test and the show don't tell. Just telling us that you did something is not enough. It's not really going to tell us anything about you. What's going to tell us about you is showing us why that applies for you being the excellent student. How are you going to convince that mathematician who works at the university, who's the admissions tutor for your course? How are you going to convince them that you are going to make a fantastic mathematician? They're already a mathematician. They're looking to teach you in their classroom, and they're also looking for maybe 10, 15 years down the line for you to be their colleague that's working with them on research, that they meet at research conferences and work with. So show them why you're going to be that excellent person. Next slide, please. And then finally, you will have your conclusion. Again, like your introduction, it is not as important as the rest. You do want to leave the person reading your personal statement with a good feeling at the end, and maybe you want to re-go over the thing that you think is your best thing that you want to show off. Think you're putting something to the front of the shelf that you want to show them. If you were arranging stuff to show them out on a table, what would you put front and center? Think about coming back to that in your conclusion. Or if you want to go for something else, you can think about going for that future bit, the aspirational bit. So in the example here, you can see someone who wants to work in environment in the future, and they've linked that back to what they're applying for, which is geography. Whatever it is, think about showing that, or think about highlighting that thing again that you really want them to know about. You think it's your key thing. Maybe you won an award for something in a school competition. Maybe you are applying for English and your piece of writing won a prize. That thing that's going to make you stand out, you really want to show off. Think about bringing that back in with your conclusion. But saying that again, if you run out of space, it's your conclusion and your introduction that's going to go first. Cut those before you cut something good from that main bulk bit. Again, make sure it is something good. So that example of being on school council in year 8, maybe you'd want a conclusion over that. But don't cut the prize you won or the group project you did as part of this program or something like that. Don't cut that for your conclusion. Cut the conclusion instead. Next slide, please. Oh, maybe not. I think my next slide is then just the final steps. So this is the structure and your first draft. Perfect. So You are all, because you are here tonight and you're excellent, and I know that you're all going to go away and start doing your planning. When you come to write your first draft, it's going to be so easy because you're going to have your plan already planned out. You're going to have all your examples and what they show you. You're going to have connected them, colour-coded dots, triangles, squares, whatever it is that show all the skills that are going to make you a fantastic student for what you're applying for. And you're going to write your first draft. It won't take very long. It'll literally just be the time of typing it. And then, because I know all of you are going to write fantastic personal statements, you are all going to be in the group of people who write fantastic personal statements, which means that you're going to have too much. You are going to write it, and I guarantee it will be way over that 4,000 characters that at the moment seems like loads to write. It'll be way, way over. And then you're going to have to start editing it. So the first thing you'll do is you'll go and get rid of unnecessary words to make it shorter. I'm sure all of you might have done it before. You'll put didn't instead of do not or ever and try and cut down on things that way. And then you will take it and you will go around and you'll get advice on it. Hopefully your school will have a day where it's normally a date where there's a deadline where you can get feedback on your personal statement. Write something before that date. Even if it's the night before and you haven't written anything yet, write something, get some feedback. It will be helpful. Use that. Because schools have so many to read and colleges have so many to read, normally there's a deadline, and if you don't make that deadline, then they won't be able to give you feedback. So make sure you get feedback on that. If you have an opportunity as part of this program to get feedback, use that. Talk to your mentor about it. And then talk to people who are not part of the university admissions process, but get feedback from them. So that might be a relative, might be a friend, whoever it is, and say, if they don't know much about personal statements, which they might not, but ask them, what impression do you get of me when you read this? What type of person do you think I am? And if they say something that's completely different from what you were trying to go with, you might want to tweak something. But if you've been trying to show that you are an analytical problem solver and that you are going to make the best physicist the world's ever seen, and they say, yeah, this makes you seem like you're really logical, you're really analytical, and you're really good at problem solving and teamwork, you're going to go, great, I've got my point across. So use what you've got around you. Again, making the most of opportunities you've had. When you're at the drafting stage, the opportunities are the people you have around you. They're your network that you've got around you. Get feedback on it. People who know about university admissions can give you more technical feedback, but even people that don't, get them to tell you what impression they get of you. Obviously, get them to proofread it. You don't want to send in a personal statement with a typo, especially if you've put that you've got great attention to detail in there. It's going to look a bit bad. So get that checked through as well. And then I think I've got one more slide, maybe? Can't remember. No. So then the final bit will be to keep refining that personal statement. Keep going over it, get the feedback and get it absolutely perfect in loads of time to send it off nice and early before that deadline so it's not rushed. So I think we are coming to the end as we started a bit late. But does anybody have any questions before I finish? Yeah. There's nothing that stops it being completely, like there's no set date, but hopefully when you've got your list of things, it'll become obvious which are like the best ones. So you could have a really good example that's further back than a current one. So you could have a current one that's not that great, it's a bit of a tenuous link. You've done some volunteering work, you're talking about communication, but you're applying to study, I don't know, chemistry, and communication is not the highest skill you want to show. But at the same time, in year 9, you did a group science project in chemistry where you got to present and you really enjoyed that, and it was the first time you were like, yes, I love chemistry. That's probably more relevant than the volunteering you did more recently, if you're showing kind of chemistry or something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. No. So your one personal statement goes to all 5 of your UCAS choices. There are some instances where universities will take what's called a supplementary personal statement. That's normally where they know that their course is not one that's offered at lots of different places. So if it's a course that's a very specific course to that university, sometimes they'll say you can send us a supplementary personal statement for that. But otherwise, no, your one personal statement goes to all 5 of your choices, which is why the advice is always to apply for the same subject across all of your choices. Some people get a bit stressed about that and they're like, I don't know, but it's like, well, you're only going to go to one, so it's better to narrow it down before you do your application than after. Yeah, at the back. I think the drafting part is in actually typing words. The summer is normally the time when you advise you to actually type the words. But the planning, which like we've talked about tonight, is actually going to be the bulk of an excellent personal statement. You should spend way more time planning than you ever spend writing. Now. Start planning it now. And if you write that plan and you realise there's a gap, you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to show my problem solving skills, but I don't really have many good examples for that, then you've got time to go and do some things that give good examples for that. Yeah. Oh, good question. I would say if it's the absolute best thing you've done, you'd probably want to start off with that in that bulk section if it's the thing that you really want to highlight. And then you could come back to it very briefly in your conclusion if that's something you wanted to do. Whether it's actually coming back to it in the same way or maybe coming back to it like in that example of your kind of aspirations for the future, and it'll remind them as like, oh yeah, he wrote that fantastic paragraph at the beginning about that too. So that's obviously a subject or an area of interest of his. But yeah, I think if it's something that you think is your best thing that you really want to show off, you've got loads of good examples for it, put it in first, catch their attention. Yeah. So no, there's no real evidence checking of your personal statement. We take you on your word. I would say if you're applying for a competitive university where there's going to be an interview, one of the things that's almost always included in an interview is talking to you about things on your personal statement. So don't put anything on your personal statement if you are likely to be interviewed anywhere that you're applying to that you're not confident to talk about and that you like fully are happy about and talking about it and can talk about it well. But yeah, good question. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you so much for listening. I know that was a lot of information on your Wednesday evening, but thank you very much.